Hey, what is up everybody? How are you guys doing? Welcome to Bluefoot Homestead. It's a little bit cool outside, but really, Christmas is coming up and it was like 63 degrees today or something like that. So it's out of season for being this warm. El Nino and stuff like that. And some people say it's the end of the world and the apocalypse. It's just weather, guys. It's just weather. But it's a good night for coffee. Don't knock me on the mug. It was clean. But it's tasting pretty good. So tonight I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about if you're thinking about maybe moving from the city to the country. There's a lot of things to consider, and maybe if you are thinking about this or you have already done this, maybe you can relate to some of the things, and maybe there might be some different cases and instances that I went through that you haven't went through, or vice versa. If there's other things that kind of pop out in your experience with doing the same thing, maybe let me know about that. It's always interesting to learn about other people's stories and all that kind of good stuff. So we moved from Phoenix, Arizona. We both were kind of tired of it. I love Arizona. I hate Phoenix. Arizona is a beautiful state. You have ski lifts and snow and tons of pine trees and cold weather. You have hot weather. You have almost borderline tropical weather. Very, very diverse for a state. You go down to Tucson and south of Tucson by the Mexican border, and you got green rolling hills and lakes, and it's just beautiful down there. You go up north, you got the Grand Canyon, Painted Desert, up to the Four Corners. You got the Big Bend area. It's not called the Big Bend, but the Indian reservations are incredible. Like the Teapot Rocks or Teapot National Forest. You got, just all kinds of stuff. And a lot of people don't realize that, there's a lot of pine trees and, beautiful, almost like, well, I'm not going to say Washington State, but, a lot of pine trees and that kind of atmosphere. Elk that walk around. I was up at the Grand Canyon and had just herds and herds of elk go right through my campsite. Just things that you don't get everywhere else. But that is not where I lived. I lived in Phoenix. I lived in the concrete jungle where there's so much asphalt it affects the weather. I am not shitting you. We'll have storms come through, and there's so much heat radiated off of the ground in the concrete that it basically puts a thermal pillar up into the atmosphere, and the clouds will be coming in and they just split right around Phoenix and then continue about their way. It's kind of funny to watch. There's even memes out there if you pay attention to any sort of weather. It's like, oh, the storm's coming. Oh, it split apart and went right around me and missed me completely. It rained 2 miles that way, 2 miles that way, and it's dry where I live. Well, that is kind of a thing. Another thing is Sedona, Arizona. I spent about 2 years going up there every single weekend. I learned that place as good as my own hometown in Phoenix. Absolutely beautiful place. But my girlfriend was a little more tired of it than I was. I was kind of burned out of Phoenix. There's a lot of bad things about living in a gigantic city. A lot of people don't realize how big Phoenix is. It's not tall, but it's spread out over a very large area. They call it the Valley. And we were both kind of tired of it. And the whole thing started with a post on Facebook of somebody posting about Idaho. And I said, man, I'm surprised you moved from there. I could live there for sure. And of course my girlfriend comes up, well, why not? Why don't we get out of here and go live somewhere beautiful? And that started the whole ball rolling. Ball, not bowl. I don't know why I said it like bull. Moo! yeah, that got the whole ball rolling. So that is when we started down the path of trying to figure out where we wanted to live. She actually wanted to move to Wisconsin. As beautiful as that state is, it is cold as a witch's tit. I didn't want to deal with it. That is too much cold for me. That is too much winter. The main thing that area had for it is the people. I like the people there. Minnesota, Wisconsin, North Dakota, you know, all these different places up in the northern Midwest. I think it's just so dang cold. People have nothing else to do but just be happy. You know, everything's so miserable for 8 months out of the year. You might as well just smile and enjoy life, you know. But really good, kind people up there. Even all the way over to Pennsylvania. I got family in Pennsylvania, and they're the nicest, sweetest people that I know. So that was out. We both kind of wanted 4 seasons. So that basically, without really drastically favoring the wintertime or the summertime, basically goes around Interstate 40 all the way across. So Interstate 40 is like Flagstaff, Arizona. You start getting into the trees and snow, you got 4 seasons. Not so much California side, but Texas, you know, I mean, you got like North Albuquerque. Amarillo doesn't really get the 4 seasons, and then you get into Oklahoma. And then you're in Missouri. Missouri gets 4 seasons. Tennessee was a big one on our radar over in the Bristol area. A little bit too hot there though, but basically across the I-40. We're off of I-44. It's basically the same thing. There's a break that goes across the country for your weather and different weather. So we decided, okay, if we want 4 seasons without being too crazy, we're going to be along that corridor. So we got to figure out a place to call our next home, you know. We had a few different considerations. We wanted a homestead. We wanted to at least get the lifestyle of homesteading. You know, homesteading isn't necessarily what we did. We bought a house that had some land, and we're gonna have a hobby farm. You know, but the general, and I dare I say it, overuse of the word homesteading is kind of what we're doing. We're doing the modern kind of hippie version, I guess, of homesteading. We cheated. Yeah, we bought a house. It already had a garden. It already had pasture. They had cows, stuff like that. So we kind of cheated. And unfortunately, when you move from a city to the country, everybody knows you're not from around here. Whether you think that you're blending in or not, no, you don't really blend in. I don't talk like anybody does around here. I don't act like anybody does around here. I don't have the same expectations as other people around here. And I've kind of realized that I am a little bit entitled because I got so used to the normalcy of the entitlement living in a city. You know, you can just say, well, I don't like this. And they're going to say, oh, I'm sorry. Let me fix this for you. I'll do whatever I need to do so my boss doesn't yell at me and stuff like that. Out here, that don't fly, you know? So like when you're so used to something, it's not wrong. And then you go to a different lifestyle and then that becomes wrong or just not normal. But basically my point is you're going to stand out a little bit. It's good to do your best to blend in, you know. So yeah, I moved from a city and I'm no damn liberal. So like I was saying, we were looking at Bristol, Tennessee, Kingston, that area. Really beautiful. And we kind of settled around the southwest Missouri area. And realized, okay, that's going to be a pretty good place. Then we started looking around at these different kind of satellite small cities, if you want to say that, more like towns, a few thousand people, down to a couple hundred people. And just kind of started looking around at different things like that. And we decided to kind of settle on this town that we're in here or one that's about 40 minutes further away from the city, which we're both kind of glad we didn't do that, because if we worked in the city, it would be quite the drive. You know, we limited ourselves to an hour, no more than an hour drive. We both had pretty close to an hour drive to work in Phoenix, and we didn't live on the other side of town. She was about 3/4 of the way across the city, and I was about halfway across the city. And yeah, I mean, sometimes it's 20 minutes, sometimes it's an hour. Hers was definitely a longer commute. So now she works from home, so makes that really easy. And I happen to land a job really close by in a small city that's close to me. That's about a 20-minute drive away. And yeah, it works pretty good. Worked out pretty good. So yeah, we settled up, not settled, but we decided to go to this area here, ended up finding a property and making it all happen. So yeah, that's kind of the story on how I got from Phoenix to here. But I'm going to talk about a couple different things, you know, some of the pros and cons to doing this and maybe some things to kind of look out for. And I am going to cheat today. I made some notes and I'm going to kind of go over those, so there'll be some cuts throughout the video. All right, so crime. One of the number one things. Crime in the cities, you know, now that I'm fluent with both of them now. Where we were living, you know, and this will kind of blend into some other things, but we were living in a house that was valued at about $425,000, maybe even $450,000 house. Which out here you're getting a mansion and, you know, 100 acres. But there, we were pretty much in the minority ghetto, to say it any other way. At least once a month, the 7-Eleven that was down the street, there was a shooting. There were shootings, robberies, and stabbings at the grocery store, a mainstream grocery store. Fry's, which is Kroger, and other places in the world. Yeah, there was just an element of fearing your life when you go out to do any sort of shopping or anything like that locally. So that's the normal. The drugs out there are just completely out of hand. You cannot get away from it. You can drive for 2 hours across the city and you will constantly have homeless guys that a lot of them are on drugs. Not all of them. There's some good people that had unfortunate things happen to them, but just being real. The methamphetamine out there is, I guess it's worse in some other parts of the country. Sometimes in the Northwest, in Portland and Seattle and stuff like that, it's bad. But man, in Phoenix is pretty bad. They have, I don't know if it's the kind of headquarters of the Dirty Dozen. The Hells Angels were real big out there. They do a lot of the trafficking for the meth. As far as I know, don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. You know, if you bleed red, and don't come hunt me down. But also from what I heard is the Dirty Dozen took over the Hells Angels in that area, and they expanded the drugs quite a bit. Now, my brother used to live right across the street from a very heavily populated Hells Angels area, and yeah, you can literally smell the meth cooking through the air. Pretty bad. Yeah, but the crime, the theft is through the roof. They have multiple war zones to where the police won't even go in or patrol. Most of the time they won't even respond to a call in that area. I believe they eventually get to it if it's a bad situation, like, you know, somebody getting murdered or something like that. You know, they're going to end up going in there, but they wait till the daytime usually. I've talked to police officers in this area, and that's what they told me. I had a friend that lived right on the edge of one. It was basically a big field in front of his place, and then there was a tall brick wall, and on the other side of that was one of the war zones. So they're around, and that wasn't even in really a bad area, but it just happens to be that neighborhood is bad. So these are all over the place. And you definitely have to watch where you drive and don't go down the wrong streets. You know, I mean, it's pretty bad out there. You know, even the prostitution and stuff like that, it's just completely out of control. Gangs are completely out of control. There's a lot of crime. I carried for my protection out there. I carried on my motorcycle, in my car, pretty much all the time. Not so much the last time I was there, but definitely the first time I was there. I had a gun pulled on me in traffic over road rage. Road rage is bad. Yeah, I mean, there's so much I can go on about living in a city, in Phoenix specifically, that is just kind of a bad deal. Now, after we moved out here, yes, there is crime. It is nowhere near 0.1% that Phoenix has. So out here, the main thing, there's a little bit of theft, but it is actually meth, which really surprised me. Apparently, I mean, I've learned that some of these smaller cities and small towns, there's a level of boredom. And people resort to doing drugs and alcoholism and stuff like that. You know, I've even talked to some people in really small towns out in Texas and stuff like that. They say, all we do is drink and get pregnant. It's all there is to do. You know, they have a lot of kids out there. Big families. So, yeah, that's kind of one of the things, meth. Right after we moved here, we realized 2 houses away, not really that far, kind of introduced ourselves and we were talking with them and stuff like that. It was the second time I met anybody from there, and a girl that was probably 20 to 25 years old was really proud for being off meth for a week. And hey, you know what? Hats off to her. That's great. But you got a long ways to go, girl. That is nothing. You're still deep in the red as far as that goes. I know this from experience. I've seen it many, many times. I never got into it myself, but yeah, it was a big part of my life. Yeah, 1 week ain't nothing. So I have no idea where she's at mentally now, or if she got back into the whole meth thing, but it's out here. It is definitely out here. Surprisingly, one of the things, it's a thing out here, I don't know why, and it's a little disturbing, is sex offenses. You know, a lot of stuff involving children, you know, and maybe that has to do with just kind of being out in the boondocks a little bit and being secluded from a normal society, that people start thinking weird and doing these things. And but there's a lot of sex offenders out here. Even somebody that's fairly close, I'm not going to talk too much about it, blatantly and openly talks about it, which it was hard for me to keep my cool with it, and I basically just stopped the conversation and haven't really talked to that person since. So yeah, that's a little bit disturbing, you know, but I know, like, once you get out in the country and stuff like that, you know, people are a little bit different. Nobody really seems to have a huge concern about it too. You know, I've talked to people at my job, I've talked to, you know, a couple other different people about it, and they're like, yeah, it is kind of high out here, you know, but, you know, and I'm like, really? You don't see that this is a major issue? You're worried about some of these other things, and you're just kind of like, yeah, all right, well, you know, don't let me catch you. But yeah, that's kind of one of the things. It's not really that bad. Even where I'm at, I don't lock my doors. I have no problem leaving the keys in my vehicle. You know, just, yeah, crime ain't a thing. As far as like the people that live in my vicinity, I am technically part of a neighborhood. I am technically part of an association, which is kind of funny. But everybody's got, you know, 5 and 10 acre plots. Neighbors are a little far away. One neighbor to one side is a solid 10 acres away, you know, so yeah, not too bad. My other neighbor's a little bit closer, but We have like one kind of troublemaker close by, and everybody else is pretty good. I think most other people kind of watch out for people in the area. As far as the incoming traffic, I don't necessarily trust the people that are first to see anybody on maybe letting me know or anything like that. So I think I'm going to be the first line of defense in my own situation here. I'm going to definitely be looking out for myself, and I've been starting to think a little bit more about security regarding that. I mean, there's like 10 different ways to get into my property. So, I mean, just putting a couple cameras out in front or watching the road or something like that probably isn't going to do much if somebody wants to get to my house. So, I just don't know how I'm going to go about that. But, yeah, kind of regarding crime, it is 1/1000th of the crime than there is in Phoenix. So it is really, really nice. I've even, talked to people, about the big city that's close, if you want to call it a big city, a couple 100,000 people, which is nothing compared to the like 275 or 3 million in the Phoenix area. Big difference. But yeah, one of the first things I did when I came here is I went and drove down to kind of a bad area, what people say is a bad area, and check it out. What is it? How bad is it? What's it look like? What is the crime? What am I up against? What am I going to have to defend against during an SHTF type situation? It ain't that bad. It's not that bad at all. Phoenix, yeah, that's a little bit of a different story. All right, Phoenix is brutal. Not gonna lie, it gets hot. One of the big things about wanting to move out of there is the weather. We were both burned out of just hot. Basically, May, it really starts to cook. June ramps up a lot. June, it's gonna go from the upper 90s up to 115, 18, 20, 22. It's been pretty mellow the last couple years, but hitting 120 degrees is pretty common in June. It's usually fairly short-lived. It's just a heat spike that comes in. But for a fact, from that point on, for the rest of June, July, August, into September, you're in the hundreds. There's really no break. The only break that comes is monsoon season, and you basically get like a month to where you maybe in your one little area get a rain shower. The rain that they get there is not like normal rain. It's not a front that comes through and it rains across the state and it moves across the state. It's about the size of a basketball court that rips across the state, but you get hundreds of them. They move fast, they put out a lot of power, and yeah, if you've seen trampolines flying through the air in some of these YouTube videos, there's a good chance that's Phoenix. They just put out a lot of wind, a lot of rain, big downpours. It floods like crazy when it does. But it's still 109 degrees outside now with like 90% humidity. So it isn't really a break. When the storms first come in, you get a break. It might even drop down into the upper 70s. It feels great. It's nice. I've written songs for bands about that kind of euphoric thing about the monsoon rains out there. But we wanted better weather. We wanted the 4 seasons. As far as Missouri goes, it's beautiful. I mean, we're a couple days from Christmas right now, and it was like 63 degrees today. Just absolutely beautiful. Now, this is a little bit abnormal, like I was mentioning before with El Nino and stuff like that, but we've usually had a couple snows. Last year, we had snow on the ground. We had a white Christmas, which was pretty dang cool. Not extremely common, so it's kind of nice to have that as our little initiation for wintertime. But we wanted the 4 seasons. We wanted cold, we wanted snow, we wanted an actual spring, that's beautiful and 75 degrees outside in the middle of the day for a month or longer, just beautiful weather. In fall, we wanted to see the leaves turn. Now, it was a little bit disappointing here. I know fall like in the Northeast, Pennsylvania, stuff like that, where you just get this palette of colors across the trees. Here, not so much. Yes, you get the leaves that change. Yes, you do get autumn, you get fall, you get the weather that comes along with it, but the foliage has a little bit to be desired. It's a lot of green to yellow to brown to nothing. And that is most of it. You get a couple splashes of oranges or reds or something like that, but just a little side note, not necessarily directly with the weather, but as you might know before I've mentioned, I am a storm chaser. So I absolutely love severe weather, hurricanes, tornadoes, big wind events, things like that. It's just fascinating to me. So I used to travel from Arizona basically to Missouri, Oklahoma, Kansas, stuff like that, right over on the border and stuff like that to go chase. So it was kind of nice that I'm going to be quite a bit closer. I had to take like a week off of work to go chase. Now I can do it on the weekend. So that was a big thing for me. Me and my girlfriend get some snow and some cold weather, and everybody's happy. So that was the big thing as far as weather goes. We wanted to get away from the hellacious furnace of Phoenix and get into a little more, I'm not going to say temperate climate because it is a little crazy here. Very windy too. But we wanted to get the 4 seasons. We wanted to break from the summertime. Summers out here are great. I love them compared to Phoenix. It does hit 100, sometimes up to 105, and yeah, it's hot, but it lasts about 2 days. A week tops of like hot weather. Phoenix, it lasts like 5 months or something like that. Just no break. Here we go again. Step outside and Mother Nature punches you right in the face. So yeah, weather was a big part of it. That's one reason we both decided to go ahead and shoot down living up in the far north in Wisconsin and up in that area, and go for a little bit further south around the I-40 corridor. So yeah, so that's one of the big players was the weather. All right, so lifestyle. Both have some good points, to be honest. I'm saying too much. Both have some good points. When I grew up, my childhood for the most part was being outside, being outdoors. Due to my father's employment, we were never really in cities. We were always in far off towns or just out of the way, because that's where his work was. So I kind of grew up that way, but as I got to be an adult, I realized, hey, it's kind of nice to live a little bit closer to work. So, and things are a little bit cheaper. You can definitely get cheaper rent and things like that when you get into an area that's not so desirable, which usually leads to cockroach infestations. But that's another story. And I just kind of got stuck in a rut. Being in Phoenix, things are fast. Everybody's got to go. I mean, it's not New York City, but it's fast paced. People drive fast, they move fast, they think fast. Everything is it's almost like an instant lifestyle. You don't have to invest any time in anything. You have it instantly. If you want to go to a movie, 5 minutes, you got it. You got everything really close by. Out here, it's a little bit different. It's a whole lot slower. People aren't driving so fast. People don't move so fast. And in some cases, people don't think so fast. But I actually had to check myself because I was kind of starting to road rage on people. I'm like, why in the hell are you driving so slow? And I'm like, oh, he's doing like 7 over the speed limit. All right, let me back off. And I just kind of learned to back off a little bit. It just might be some old biddy coming home from church, or something like that. They're in no rush. I still kind of check myself on it sometimes. That kind of goes back to, coming from the city to the country. You bring in a lot of habits and lifestyle things that don't really belong out in the country. So, kind of something to think about. And, you know, consider and keep in mind if you decide to do something like this. Food in Phoenix is awesome. They became kind of a foodie town. The whole food lifestyle really kicked off about 2013, maybe 2010, in that era. And there are a lot of good restaurants. Pretty much any cuisine you can think of, from Puerto Rican food to Indian food to Jamaican food, Caribbean food, Mexican food that you can't touch anywhere, maybe South California. Pretty much anything that you can think of, Venezuelan, Russian, I mean, they have a restaurant for everything there. And it's probably pretty good too. There isn't really many crappy restaurants. When we moved here, we decided to go, you know, I used to be a chef, so, you know, I'm obviously thinking, okay, what are the restaurants? What's the scene? What do people have? And we both like kind of the mom and pop cafeteria type, you know, just a little more homely and welcoming and warm than, say, an Applebee's. So we decided to search out these type restaurants. Well, fortunately, that's about all they got. They don't have a Chili's or an Applebee's or a TGA Fridays or a Carrabba's or an Olive Garden or anything like that, unless we go drive an hour, you know, into the city to find stuff, and then they have stuff there. But if you want to stay within an hour of your house, you're limited. You are extremely limited. I don't really advocate going out and blowing a lot of money on eating at restaurants, because it is really a waste, because you can learn to cook it yourself and do it all yourself, and get pretty close to what, you know, they do in restaurants. And if it's a popular dish in a popular restaurant, your phone's probably got copycat recipes, little tip for you, to recreate what these restaurants are doing. But we decided to go to a place called the Rocking Chair that is pretty close to us. And yeah, it sucked. I mean, the food's horrible. They do a good fried chicken, I'll give them that. But pretty much everything else on the menu is just, hospitals definitely eat better than guys that eat there. But they've changed over a couple times. They got their regulars, they got their people that have been going there forever. But all these other restaurants, they're just they're number fours. I mean, you can eat it. It serves the purpose. You know, the pizza joints are, You know, I have actually had, in a couple cases, better pizzas from a gas station than the best pizza joint in this area. So, you know, that's kind of something to think about. It's a lifestyle change. It's different. Just about everybody really just eats at home. You know, it's not a big foodie area. Even in the city, I mean, their claim to fame is cashew chicken. You know, I heard that and I'm like, huh? Really? And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to try this local legend of cashew chicken, and guess what? Yeah, it sucked. It was horrible. It's the exact same thing as every other cashew chicken, but less flavor, and they put sauce on the side. What a revelation, you know? But yeah, the food scene. Every once in a while, they do get food truck gatherings and stuff like that, and you actually do get some pretty good food in the food trucks. But as far as the restaurant scene here, it lacks. It really does lack. And that's entertainment too. You know, I mean, there's maybe one medium-sized movie theater within a couple hours. Just things like that. You know, when there was within a couple hours, I probably had a choice of a dozen 30-screen cinemas in Phoenix that are going to have every variation of every movie that you can possibly imagine. It's available to you. So, you know, definitely living in a city, there are some definite benefits. I could drive just a couple miles and be at this huge, you know, next to the Cardinals Stadium nightlife extravaganza with live music all over the place, playing on different stages and bars and crazy stuff going on. Just, you know, if that's your thing, I rarely went there, but it was really cool when I did, you know. it's available if you want it. Here, it's not. If you want it, you have to make it yourself. You know, or almost drive to a different state than where I'm at. I mean, I got Kansas City and St. Louis. St. Louis, I'd rather not ever go to. Kansas City is about 3 hours away. So Tulsa is about 3 hours away. So if I want to go, you know, see a big show or a concert or anything like that, you know, that's kind of what I'm looking at. They just don't have a lot down here in southern Missouri. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about the lifestyles. Yeah, I mean, it's a small town atmosphere here. You don't have a lot. You don't have a lot of availability to things. But what it doesn't have there, it excels with things like patriotism. You know, nobody's afraid to fly the flag. In fact, if you come in burning a flag around this place, you're probably going to get a beat down. You're not just going to get, you know, people taking, you know, sell videos of it so they can get TikTok hits or whatever, you know. It'd be a pretty tough place to be a liberal out here, you know, to be honest. But I think most of the people that are liberal don't really seek out this type of life. They're happier with the kind of the 15-minute city type lifestyle. Not so much having to work for their things that they need in life, you know. All right, and for something I've been thinking about a little bit more recently is if and when there is an SHTF situation, which I think that we all kind of agree that this is going to be happening, a lot of it is going to have to do with your surrounding area, your lifestyle that you live, where do you live, on how you're going to be dealing with things. Now, again, pros and cons. In a city, you're going to be able to find more people kind of grouped together to be able to push through whatever kind of madness comes. Living out here in the country, you're a little more limited. Yeah, you can do it, but I mean, for me, I'm an introvert. I'm not one to just go out and talk to some people, but I know a couple people out here that are like-minded for the most part, and yeah, we'll be able to put some stuff together. But living in Phoenix, you know, if you have a couple ARs and a little stockpile of ammo and things like that, you have a huge advantage over 99.9% of the people that live in the city. There are so many people that the odds that you're going to come up against other people that are well armed are going to be fairly slim. It's a constitutional carry state. You can open carry anywhere you want. Well, I mean, I'm not going to say that, but you can open carry, you can conceal without a permit, all that stuff. Constitutional carry. So there's a lot of incentive to own a firearm in Arizona. A lot of people don't do it. You know, it's, you know, and you don't know. I mean, when people conceal and stuff like that, you don't know that they're carrying, but you're going to have a good advantage. Just going off of the news stories and things like that, there's not a lot of resistance to crime when it comes to a gun. So I mean, that gives you a little bit of an advantage. Having a gun is an equalizer. You know, if somebody comes up to you with a gun, you can equal the playing field if you yourself are armed as well. Now, if they come up to you with a rock or a stick or something like that, well, now you have an unfair advantage. If they're coming at you with a deadly blunt weapon, an assault rock, if you will, you know, you're going to be able to have the use or the right to use whatever force you need. So that's going to give you an unfair advantage. That is benefit. The downfall to that is there's a lot of those people, millions. So you have a much larger herd to deal with. Okay, now on the flip side, out here in the Ozarks, there's not a lot of people. There's very few people compared to Phoenix. In fact, there's only a couple thousand that live in the city that I live in, and I'm out in the sticks as far as that goes. So the difference is, out here it's a constitutional carry state as well. You're allowed to carry anything, but everybody carries. Everybody hunts. It's very seldom. I mean, you're weird if you don't hunt. You're the oddball in the minority if, you don't have a story to tell about that last buck that you got in opening day. You're just kind of out of the conversation and you're the oddball off to the side. So at least in the world that I've created out here and the people that I've related with. I know there's people that don't hunt, and I know there's people that are very much against it, and there's probably a PETA office somewhere around here, But people hunt, people carry, people shoot, and people are efficient at shooting. If you hunt, you know how to shoot, you know how to aim, you know how to execute, you know how to pinpoint, you know how to group bullets. Okay? So here's the thing, when it comes to SHTF situations, now your enemy is a lot more formidable. It's not going to be an easy fight like it would be with, say, a couple hundred people in Phoenix, or 10 or 20 people in Phoenix going up against 2 here. You have a higher chance of not making it through that battle because they know how to shoot. You're dealing with a whole bunch of country boys out here. That's a whole different ball game than it is with a whole bunch of liberal urban type people in that mindset. So definitely something to think about. That could be an advantage to living in a city. So the other thing is, if you are a little more social and you do kind of network your ideas out to other people kind of in a covert way to get people and get a group together and stuff like that, your chances are a little bit higher to get more like-minded people. A lot of people that do move here because it's God's land. There's a church at every corner, and people go to church, carry guns. That's what they do here. It's the Ozarks. So you got to play that into your game plan if you're thinking about going out into an area like this. Kind of along those lines, wildlife. You live in a city, pigeon is about the only wildlife you got. Depending on the city, you got some rats the size of small dogs and different things like that, but it's nothing that you're really going to be eating. People don't go out in the Bronx and hunt rats. Actually, they do hunt rats. They'll pay you to hunt rats. But that's a little different game. Out here, a lot of people hunt. Out here, there are a lot of white-tailed deer. You see them everywhere. We have them walking through our backyard constantly. I think we have a couple resident deer that just live on our property. You see them on the side of the roads. You see foxes, raccoons, actually armadillos, surprisingly. Plenty of birds and geese and ducks and just waterfowl and pheasant, and there's a lot of stuff to hunt here. Hence why everybody hunts. Everybody's got a gun. So in the city, if it's going to come down to a situation where you have to worry about survival and getting meat for yourself, if you got to hunt, it's going to be pretty hard. You can definitely hunt outside of Phoenix. You can get javelina, which is kind of in the wild boar family. It's more of a rodent, but they are edible. They make pretty good sausage, I guess. You do have mule deer. You have elk. If you're able to get up north out of Phoenix, you have elk. If you're worried about a gas situation, if you don't have a lot of gas, or if you have to walk or some sort of manual means of transportation, you ain't getting an elk. That's going to be, it's a 2-hour drive to go and get up into elk country, but it's good when you get there. But yeah, there's basically no wildlife other than things that want to try to kill you, like scorpions and black widows and Gila monsters. There's not a big choice of food. So in the Ozarks, that was kind of one of the things. My girlfriend's a big hunter. I've been kind of getting into it a little bit more. I'm going to try, hopefully, my first hunt next year. Maybe opening day, I don't know. But hunting is very, very plentiful here. And there is a lot to hunt. They got black bear here, a little more rare. Even, I think, some wild boar, stuff like that. But yeah, there's a lot of animals here. I love wildlife. I shoot wildlife photography sometimes. That's how I shoot animals. I've never been an advocate like very pro. I've never been against it. I definitely understand the conservation part of it, population control. I understand the sport part of it. And believe it or not, I actually understand big game hunting and trophy hunting better than a lot of people. Most people are really against it. After I learned about it and got some explanations on how that all works and happens and the tags come available, and it's not really so bad. But yeah, there's a lot of animals here, a lot of wildlife. Hunting is hopefully going to be a little bit easier than it is going to be living in a city. So that's definitely a very big plus, at least for me. Now, if you are one of the people that are thinking about moving out of the city into a country, rural type area, 1, I highly suggest it. 2, do it as fast as you can. Everything's a little bit expensive right now, but do it as fast as you can. And then 3, something I highly recommend, and it's something that I did to kind of get a idea of where you're looking at moving and stuff like that. And this went back, I've always lived in apartments pretty much half of my life. I don't mind it. I call them my pod, because you're basically living in a pod with a whole bunch of other people, almost like a honeycomb in a beehive or something like that. You got your one little section, you got somebody here, apartments. But you always have perfect landscaping. You have a beautiful jacuzzi, pool, a gym, a pool hall, a movie theater, garages, community stuff if you want to get into that. There's a lot of advantages to having everything taken care of for, entertainment wise and things like that for a premium price. Some even have convenience stores on their premise and stuff like that, but I don't necessarily mind it. One thing that I used to do whenever I'd move to a new apartment or I was looking at a certain area is I would go there at nighttime, 10 o'clock, midnight, and be that sketchy dude driving through the parking lot, to say it any other way. I wasn't in a paneled out van with free candy on the side or anything like that. But I'd go check it out. Neighborhood stuff like that. How is it on a Saturday night at midnight? That's more of what I'm worried about. Daytime, everything always kind of, it looks kosher and good to go. Even in a bad neighborhood, everything's just kind of a normal day-to-day thing, but everything changes at nighttime. I think we all know that. So that's what I would do. I'd go kind of cruise the neighborhood, see what's going on, see if there's party houses, see if, there's a lot of action going on in an apartment complex, if there's even just a lot of people, what kind of cars are there, what kind of people, what kind of incomes, etc., etc., etc. So if I'm moving to a completely different place, one thing that I do is I download the app for the news. The last couple places I've moved out of state, I haven't needed it too much, except for when I moved to Florida. I went and checked it out and, talked to police officers and watched the news and stuff like that. But definitely when I was making the move out here, I started watching the news about 6 months before I made the move out here. What's going on? What's going on in this area? What are the crimes? What are the stories? Now, in Phoenix, you turn on the news, it's murder, theft, house fire, probably a meth lab blew up, more murder, car accident, murder, sports, weather, and a squirrel on water skis. Boom, done. So basically, like in the 90s, I quit watching news. It was way too depressing. It was just things that I didn't need constantly pumped into my life. Of course, now it's all political and politics and all that kind of stuff. But when I came out here, I downloaded the news app for the local news channel out here to see what kind of stories they have. Now, what did I find? Well, I found a lot of stuff about high school sports. They really report and love their high school teams out here. People go to the high school games. They support their high school, and they probably went to that high school, and they stand by it. A lot of stuff about festivals, farmers markets, things like that, homesteading shows. They report the price of cattle. Okay. And this is the city news, by the way. This isn't those small town stuff. This is the city. They do fishing reports on the news, on mainstream 6 p.m., 8 p.m. news. They're doing fishing reports because so many people do that. And actually once, I had been kind of waiting to see it again because I found it warmingly comical that they did a story about, it was like Joe or something like that, that went out and got his first giant buck, and this thing was huge. And it was all about a hunting story that this guy went out and got his buck and said, hey, you got it on public land over in this area, and this is just awesome. Look at this happy guy in this picture right here, standing next to his killed buck, and showed the picture with his gun and the buck and all that, and it was pride across the whole area. Everybody's proud of those type things here because everybody hunts. You put that in Phoenix and people are gonna rip a hole through that and come at you like really, really hard. And they're a pretty right-wing state. I can't guarantee how long that's gonna happen, but yeah, you don't see that everywhere. So like looking at the news out here, it was very, very warming on things that they report on. I highly suggest doing that if you're looking to move to another, small town, start homesteading, just get out in the country, get some animals in a garden. Highly suggest it. Look into the local news channel, preferably one of the bigger ones, and just see what's going on. See if it's crimes. Of course, there are crimes on the news here, but it is nothing like a big city. And they do spend time to report on things that are more important, like the fishing report. So definitely look into that, watch the news, learn what goes on in the area that you're looking to live. You're gonna come in with a lot more knowledge than most people do. So highly suggest it. Now, another big thing was the cost of living. Like I mentioned before, the house that we were living in, basically in the ghetto, was upwards of $500,000. Out here, $500,000 is going to buy you almost whatever you want. If you want a lot of land, talking 150, 250 acres with a really nice house on it, you're going to be looking upwards of $1 million. And there are those houses out here, but $1 million in Phoenix is going to get you a middle-class house. A nice one, but nonetheless middle class. So I was able to get my house for a decent price. I think it was about $1.5 million to $2 million or something like that if I was to actually purchase it in Phoenix, and I can't afford that. So everything's cheaper out here. Land is cheaper, houses are cheaper, gas is $1 cheaper than it is in Phoenix, which isn't a huge spread, but it's significant. That makes a difference. Now, food, I don't know what the food cost is, but I kind of imagine it's fairly similar around the world. Everything's going to be more expensive in the Northeast or something like that if you go to New York City. But, for the most part, food's going to be the same, but everything's just pretty cheap. It's cheap to do things. Festivals are cheap. Entertainment's cheap. Just everything's pretty cheap. I think that's because there isn't a huge demand for it. When you got thousands of people wanting to do it, you can jack the price up, cut it back to just, $800 or $1,500. Still going to make a killing, and it's a lot easier because you're not dealing with people. Out here, there's not as many people, so you got to kind of drop the price to entice people to come into your events and things like that. So things are a little bit cheaper out here. They're a little more personal. You go to an event and it might just be, 1,000 people. We've been to a couple big events like homesteading shows and stuff like that. People come from out of state to go to the ones that are here. They really do that game up pretty good here in the Ozarks. So even gardening and seeds and stuff like that, they'll run through 10, 20,000 people a day at a gardening seed festival, just a company to sell seeds. And they say, come on in, check out our stuff, walk around our property a little bit. It's a big thing out here, But yeah, just in general, the cost of living is much cheaper if you get out in the, the country than it is living in a city. I guess that's kind of a no-brainer, but figured I'd bring it up. Another big thing is resources. This kind of goes back a little bit to a little bit of SHTF situation. If you have to go out to get resources, you're going to have a really hard time if you're out in the country. You're going to be very limited. Obviously, you're not going to want to be bothering your neighbors or anything like that. You definitely don't want to go steal from your neighbors or anything like that. They're going to be on your side anyway. They're going to be going through the same things that you are. But in a city, you multiply everything. There's multiplied people, there's multiplied food, multiplied resources, multiplied gas. Everything is everywhere all the time. So if it comes down to needing to get things, you're going to have 100 choices instead of 2. So if the 2 things when you're living out in the country are no longer available, you're out. You're going to have to travel to try to find something. Now, if 2 gas stations, say, go down from a cyber attack, well, you've got about 4,500 more to go choose from, reasonably close. So, the resources, pharmacies everywhere, just any sort of resource that you can imagine is available within a city, to be able to get things. And this, of course, is, talking about an SHTF situation in the very early stages of it, but those are going to be the most important stages to where you're going to be able to set up what sort of survival or game plan to be able to get through the situation. It's all going to be right in the beginning. And it should be preactive before anything happens. That's what the whole prepping mentality is. But everybody's going to be going out. It doesn't matter if you're, Canadian prepper or Joe Blow down the road that's got nothing but 2 packs of ramen in his cupboard. You're going to be going out a little bit as everything first starts, and you got to get what you can. You got to get your resources. We're all going to do it. It doesn't matter how prepared you are. So yeah, living in the country, it's going to be a whole lot harder. You got to be a little more in the mindset of long-term preparedness, sustainable living, food sources that are going to sustainable food sources. I was struggling for the name. As far as animals and a large garden, a market garden or something like that. You got to kind of be in more of that mindset. You're not just going to be going down to a grocery store and raid out their produce department or something like that. So not going to be an option here. In fact, our grocery store is about the size of a gas station here. So, and it's a major name too. But yeah, resources, you got to think way ahead of time when you're living out in the country, because it's not really available. All right, so the overall living lifestyle. Like I mentioned before, I lived in apartments most of the time, a few houses. I never minded it. Don't like HOAs. Don't like having neighbors close by. I never really had problems in an apartment. I was always really lucky with that. Never had a neighbor I hated. I was always good friends with my neighbors. They were never loud. They were always respectful. I know, right? Yeah. I was lucky. I know that. I had more problems in houses when my neighbors were actually further apart. But you can't do a lot in a suburb. You can't do a lot in an HOA. You can't do a lot in an apartment. I tried grilling a steak one night and almost got evicted out of my apartment. That sucks, You're very, very limited when it comes to the rules, laws, regulations, and stuff like that, and what you can and cannot do in a city. Living out here in the country, I can do whatever I want. I can walk outside with a sniper rifle and just start laying rounds down the side of my property. I can store 40 cars outside. I can build onto my house. I can build my own house. I don't have to ask for any permission to do anything. I can do whatever I want. The side to that is you're out in the country, so other people don't really want to come out to help. If you are living in a city, you have a plumbing issue, you got a plumbing line that busts, or you get a leak under your fridge or something like that. You can pretty much have somebody out there at any time within an hour if it's really, really late at night. There's people on call 24/7 for any sort of fixing matter or emergency. In any case, anywhere, anytime, it's available. Out here, yeah, you ain't getting it. You got to wait till 9 in the morning before they'll even pick up their phone. Then once they pick up their phone, they're going to say, well, you're out of our service area. We don't get pizzas delivered here. We don't get plumbers that come out here. We don't get electricians that'll come out here to fix an electrical issue. So, you got to learn that stuff. You got to figure out to do it. You have to figure out how to do it. Sorry. I'm not the best with all that. I know a lot of the basics of different things. I've actually taken some classes on electrical, but I don't completely trust myself these days. That was a really long time ago. I've never done anything with plumbing. I know a little bit about a lot. I'm not an expert in anything by any means. So I don't have a lot of time either, but I wanted to get some wiring done, run some wiring out for lights outside of my garage. I wanted to put some lights out in the front of my house, kind of spotlights, floodlights. I have one that's not working for the garage here. Can't figure it out. I went through everything I know. Everything's testing good on wattage, and it should work, and it's not. So I wanted to get an electrician out here to really look at everything, and nobody really wants to come out. It's too far of a drive. So you have to kind of rely on people you might know. You have to rely on locals, and you're not necessarily going to get the same type of service that you would with a LLC company out of a big city that gets sued on a regular basis. They cover their ass. You're going to get somebody's uncle that used to be a plumber back in, Maine, that still might know a couple things that could probably come out here and do the job okay. We had a guy that he was kind of a handyman, came out. We asked him to hook up, redo the plumbing for relocating a washer and dryer, which he did a great job doing, and also install a spigot on the side of our house so we have water on the side of our house. Well, he did that, couldn't get the right materials, jerry-rigged everything together. About a month later, I realized a sound I was hearing was a major leak, almost an explosion, where he joined everything together, and I was blasting water underneath my house for a month or two. Couldn't figure out where the flooding in the backyard was coming from, and I figured that out real quick. Came out, fixed it. It didn't work. So, yeah, I've done what I can to kind of put a Band-Aid over it for now, but I'm going to have to rip it all out and redo it, and I'm just going to end up doing it myself because, that was a bad straw that I pulled on getting somebody to take care of a problem for me as a service. It's really hard to get services, definitely if you move out into the country. Whether you want to or not, whether you're proficient in these type things or not, you got to learn it. You got to be able to do it yourself, especially if SHTF happens. You're going to have really nobody to rely on. I mean, whoever's in your group or friends or anything like that, maybe neighbors, they might be able to help you out with some certain things, but you guys are going to have to do it yourself. You're not going to be able to call AMCO to fix your transmission. You're not going to be able to call blah, blah, blah carpentry to add something onto a house or fix a wall or something like that. It's just really isn't going to happen. Of course, that's all relative. It depends where you live. You might have better luck than I do, but I'm about, an hour out of all the big companies. Nobody wants to drive an hour out to do an estimate or anything like that, so I'm slowly learning. But yeah, that's kind of a little bit of a rundown on, what it's like going from a city to being in the country. There's a lot of things that I didn't think about. There's some things that I did think about that worked out pretty good. Like looking at the news and watching the news and stuff like that. But hopefully it'll give you guys a little bit of an idea of some things to think about if you are thinking about doing this. If you have already done this at some point in your life, are these kind of the same things that you've experienced in your experience of moving? And definitely, leave a comment if there's something you'd like to add, different things to maybe look out for and things like that. Definitely do that. Hey, kitty, don't drink coffee. It's too late. My Mouser. This is a pretty cool cat. It's funny, they absolutely hated us when we got them, but yeah, they're pretty cool now. Anyway, this turned into a hell of a long video. I apologize about that, but covering a lot of stuff on this, and I tried to get through it as fast as I could. There's probably going to be a lot of cuts throughout this because I'm going to try to reduce the time frame on it, but I do appreciate you watching. Again, hit that subscribe maybe if you're new to the channel, or hit the like button if you've been here before. I'd really appreciate that. Get ready, guys. Get ready, guys. If you're able to get out of the city, I highly suggest it. So, till next time, I do appreciate it. Come back. Peace.